Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives.
Welcome to the Content Magazine podcast. My name is David Valdespino. I'm the developer of Content Magazine, and today we are sitting down with Tomoyo Yoshinaga, who is the co-owner at Cache Only, a bar down here in downtown San Jose. Also helps to run Haberdasher, which is another bar in San Jose, and there's a new project on the horizon here called Bitterbuck, which is going to be opening a little bit later this year here.
Yeah, hopefully way sooner than that.
Yeah.
2 weeks, I think I can say that.
Okay,
It's
awesome.
a hard 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, Thanks for joining us here. You know, I'm going to hopefully get into your well, we definitely are going to get into all the projects and stuff that you're working on, but usually we kind of like to start with who you are, you know, as kind of a person and your background. I did a little bit of research, a little bit of sleuthing, and a little bit of digging as best I could. There wasn't a ton. I know, you know, I've read a couple like shorter interviews and stuff like that, but kind of zooming out and going back in time, I read something about you getting a scholarship for judo at San Jose State University. So let's kind of go back
Yeah,
then.
so we can go all the way back to 2005 is when I moved out to San Jose from Chicago.
Okay.
So I was born and raised there. My brother and I moved out to San Jose to go to San Jose State. Now, there's no scholarships for judo.
Okay.
It's all on your dime.
Okay.
At the time, it was my parents' dime, trying to like
Parent scholarship.
pay out of state tuition and like survive.
Yeah.
But yeah, both he and I, we had been competing and growing into more of like a national competitor, international competitor position in judo. And I did that that was my life for 15 years.
Yeah.
Started when I was 7, and then the goal was to train at an Olympic training center, which San Jose State is for judo.
Yeah.
They have a great team, yeah, that's how I spent my college years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing kind of working with the magazine is like I kind of learn about all of the different subcultures. And like, I mean, just off top, I wouldn't think of San Jose as like a judo kind of town or like a, you know, but
I had to look up where San Jose was. From Chicago, like I was like, where is that in relation to LA, San Francisco, and yeah.
So you came here kind of with judo as the magnet.
Yes.
Went to SJSU and you studied humanities there, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then while you were at school, you started working, I imagine, right? So what did that kind of look like?
So started working as a barista at I think it was called On 4th Cafe at the library.
Okay.
Just to make ends meet, go to school full-time, train full-time. So that was just pretty much the round-the-clock, you know, juggling 2 jobs, moved in as a server at Hukilau in Japantown.
Okay.
And then my brother started doing security at the Voodoo Lounge.
Okay.
And most guys end up having to just start as security, especially a guy built like him. It just kind of made sense.
With the background in judo also helps.
That too, yeah. And then as soon as I turned 21 in 2008, I got an interview and started bartending pretty much right out the gate.
Yeah.
Whereas my brother had to kind of fight his way into bartender there because like they just wanted security guys, and then he was bar backing, and then we would trade shifts a little bit so he could learn a bit, and then we both were bartending 2 or 3 years into Voodoo Lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a great time. Like I wouldn't trade the Voodoo Lounge days. I wouldn't trade that for anything because I got to see so many great musicians, artists, local and nationwide. I didn't realize how big some of these guys were. And I was just like bartending up in the mezzanine. I'm like, oh, who is this guy? You know, like I got to see the Wailers, Modest Yahoo, Mos Def, like, and then there's so many talented San Jose bands too, right? Whiskey Avengers was like, that was like their spot.
Yeah.
You know, so some really fun nights for sure. Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of went from having to look up where San Jose was, what it was, right? To like now kind of being immersed in this kind of arts and culture scene through the bar. I guess how has your kind of relationship and kind of thoughts on San Jose kind of developed, or like how have you kind of seen downtown kind of shift in that time?
It's been interesting. I think the conversation was always, we're right on the cusp of this great arts and music like explosion, right? And I saw that developing at the Voodoo Lounge, and then I kind of just started to fizzle. The lease was up, and folks kind of like spread out where they went. It was perfect timing for me because I was looking for something more fulfilling.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I thought bartending was just going to be the way you pay your way through college, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually I'd do something with my degree. I didn't really have a plan. Or like a guidance counselor at San Jose State. So I was just kind of taking classes that I thought were interesting. And then me and my brother, we've discovered Single Barrel. He actually drunkenly discovered it. It was down in the basement. It was like maybe a month old, and he comes home with tacos in his hand, and he's like, "You gotta try this place." So we went there the following week, and Cache was behind the bar 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And he called my brother up because he liked my brother's energy. He's like, "You want a job?" And then I just sat there on the bar stool at the end and just watched this. And then from there, that just became my entire life. Was like, I didn't know bartending could be like this.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was that kind of convergence between school, sports, and then this job they kind of reversed, right? Like the job was kind of financing or helping to kind of support you through those other things. But how did those kind of start to separate? Like what was your kind of experience in judo at that point, and kind of like what was your expected trajectory, or what were you kind of hoping for? And then like kind of how did that kind of pan out? Yeah.
So, I think the timing kind of all fell into each other, but I was in the 70 kilo division in judo, which was, as many folks know, was Ronda Rousey's division as well. She was the 63 kilo for a while, and I'm like, stay there. And then she moved up because like keeping that weight down is really, really, really hard. And so she moved into my division, and we competed for years. We grew up together, like not. She was, West Coast, and I was in Chicago, but we would always see each other or compete, or we were on, Pan American junior teams together.
Yeah.
And so I think, and a combination of the caliber that she was at, she was just miles beyond everybody else in our division.
And folks, might hear Ronda Rousey now, and they kind of think of like the WWE and even the UFC background, which, I mean, the showmanship, obviously, but that background of kind of like grinding through the circuits and that development early on in like a single martial art too is like, interesting.
I mean, judo definitely made her the force to be reckoned with. Plus her ferocity is just like unmatched especially in women's sports, or at least for judo. She was intense. But I think that paired up too with a little burnout on my side when it came to judo. It's unless you pivot into MMA or some other avenue, when it comes to the martial arts, there's not much money there, and I didn't really know how much further I could go with it.
Totally.
So as that phased out, I was also like, I gotta graduate. I don't know why I have a humanities major and it took me 6.5 years. And then paying my bills, having this awesome job at the Voodoo Lounge, and then discovering that there's just this like abyss of knowledge with the craft cocktail side of things. It just kind of became this natural transition. And that's when I really started to gain roots here in San Jose. And there wasn't really a question of like, I'm not going to move back to Chicago. I'm not going to follow a boyfriend somewhere else or something like that. It was time to like kind of dig in and just like get really good at something else.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about bartending and craft cocktails, like you said, the abyss of knowledge. But there's almost like a similar training component to like a martial art
Oh,
or
hell
like an
yeah.
athletic
Especially
sport?
under Cache. Like, he was militaristic, in a good way, and I definitely have more of that soldier kind of mentality.
Yeah.
He was in the Army, but then the discipline and the fight that he had to get to actually move up into a position of being a bartender, being a flair bartender, being a flair judge, like and running and operating bars. He did all sorts of bar consulting too, so he understanding design of bar.
Yeah.
So he like had explored so much, and now he got this chance to like maybe people in San Jose want a speakeasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it totally panned out.
Yeah. So even kind of zooming back to the Voodoo Lounge days, I mean, I think for the average person, like, what is it like showing up to be a bartender on day one? Like
at the Voodoo Lounge. Oh, okay. So this is great. My boss and teacher, first guy who taught me how to bartend, Matt Crudo, he ran the whole show there. He put those shows together. He made Voodoo Lounge what it is. But it was very much like you get thrown into the deep end immediately, right? It was me and another trainee, and
your shift starts when the club opens, like
pretty
that.
much, or like set up like 8:00,
Okay.
right? We open at 10. And that was like my training, right? So he's like, okay, here he shows us what like a kamikaze, how to make it, and just kind of get a general ratio of it, get a pour count on that, and then he shakes it up and he makes us shoot it. And I'm like, okay. And then he has me make a redheaded slut shooter. We have to shoot it.
Okay.
And then we did that 4 more times with different shooters.
Okay.
That was my training. You get handed a bank bag and like, don't fuck it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but I mean, I was able to flex and hopefully did a good job.
And then when that started out, how many nights a week were you working? What was the kind of
probably schedule? For my brother and I, we were kind of more like chameleons. Like we could shift into live music kind of stuff.
Okay.
My brother was a musician as well, so is a musician. So he was like always doing the live shows, but then we could also do Top 40 Friday, Saturday. And we just kind of like shifted. So it broke up the week really nice, but I was doing like 3-4 nights a week.
Yeah.
Some reggae nights, Top 40, David Allan Coe. Like it was pretty random, but
okay.
Yeah.
So, I imagine you kind of talked about Single Barrel a little bit, a little bit before my time, right? But like researching, like Secret is kind of one of them, right? Like a little bit hidden, like you kind of had to find it. It was in the same location that Haberdasher is in now. Yeah, that's San Salvador and First.
Yeah.
And then the other one is just like legendary, right? Like what a cocktail bar, what a speakeasy should be and could be at the time.
At the time, yeah. So it was 2010. He opened with Joe, his partner.
Yeah.
Joe owned the cigar spot, the shop next to Cinnabar, or like one door over.
Yeah.
They partnered up and opened up this spot down in the basement. They had 1 month to make their rent and figure it out. It was a really bad lease handshake deal kind of thing, right? But he wanted to see what he could do.
Yeah.
And see if San Jose wanted this, because everybody had to travel up to San Francisco for classic cocktails, for fresh juice, not just an AMF and not just bottled beer, right?
Yeah, I think I read that kind of analysis of the bar scene in San Jose at the time as being like Red Bulls and vodkas and kind of like a club scene.
Yeah, I made a lot of AMFs. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, so it was like Cache wasn't sure, is San Jose actually ready for this or wants this? Let's try it on. And 6 months in, there was a 2-hour wait outside, and there was $0 spent on marketing.
Yeah.
I think MySpace was still kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And Facebook was coming up, but there wasn't, I don't even think Instagram had happened yet. And And so it's just all word of mouth.
Yeah.
And then your way of getting the word out was Yelp. And I think we still have all the records of it, but we had 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews, and they said the same exact thing of why they either loved it or hated it.
Yeah.
But Cache dug his heels in and stuck to, you got it. If you're gonna have Hennessy, you're gonna have it in a sidecar.
Yeah.
And it really, people were very grateful to have that, like a more adult drinking kind of clientele. We're really grateful to have that, but it also opened up those folks who are like, oh, I didn't know I could drink this way.
Totally. And so you mentioned your brother kind of going in there, coming back with the tacos, telling you about it.
Yeah.
What was your first experience kind of going to Single Barrel? And I mean, I imagine at that time that's another thing that kind of was coming up, is just like the tight-knit community between the different bars and like the different bartenders and the different venues around. So what was that kind of like when you went into Single Barrel? Had you already been kind of familiar with that brand of craft cocktail?
Not at all.
Or?
I didn't know that, like, what you could do with bitters. I had never seen a bar spoon, like a julep strainer as opposed to a hawthorn strainer. It's like the slanted spoon or the spring.
Yeah.
I just hadn't seen those tools before. I hadn't seen somebody conduct themselves behind the bar that way and just like hold court and have all of that knowledge and story behind each one. I thought that was so cool. And as a humanities major, I was really into the history and sociology, and I was like, I didn't realize that like bartending could be that.
Yeah.
So I just ate it up.
Yeah. And for folks that might not know too, right? Like Single Barrel's kind of philosophy was like one-on-one connections with patrons and kind of curating drinks for individuals, right?
Yeah, there was a menu of 10 drinks, but it was just a chalkboard, and we would flavor profile every person that would come down. So I would have a 5-minute conversation with you, and if you had 6 with you or 5 people with you, I would do that for all 6 of you, and then at the same time make your cocktails, and then you'd go and sit down and enjoy. Couldn't really be too loud because there was no sound dampening. Soundproofing in there. It was just all concrete, which is why that rule came into play, because you could have this conversation and you could hear us echoing off the walls in the other end.
Yeah.
So it just kind of leaned right into the speakeasy kind of vibe, which was already happening in New York, San Francisco, that whole cocktail scene.
Yeah.
They were already pushing that envelope like in the late 80s, early 90s. It became a thing in the 2000s. And it was just a matter of time before somebody was going to bring it here. You know?
So you talked about flavor profiling people. Mm-hmm. I mean, what kind of questions would you be asking? How do you know?
So you can start a couple of different ways. Like, for example, what do you normally like to drink?
For a cocktail?
Drinks or cocktails, either way.
Stuff that's a little bit more sour, like I like a cranberry juice. Like
okay.
That's kind of
sour. Do you like that pucker, or do you like kind of sweet and sour tangy?
Probably the pucker more.
More pucker.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you like a fan of like grapefruit, or like you would bite into a lemon and you're cool with that?
I could,
yeah.
But I don't do it for fun.
Right. Fair enough. Just a challenge. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Do you like the taste of alcohol, or do you kind of want to balance that out a little bit?
Like the taste of alcohol.
You like the taste. Are you more like lighter, darker?
Darker.
Darker, like whiskey, rum,
yep,
kind of thing. Cool. There's several different cocktails, actually, that I could make for you. The Buster Brown is a great one.
Okay.
If you're okay with a little sweetness but some fun spice, the Ninth Ward is another one.
Okay.
And a classic one, it's not as sour, it's just more balanced, is a Derby. And a Derby is a bourbon cocktail with vermouth, orange liqueur, and lime.
And are these like historical cocktails, or was there like invention involved, or like what kind of balance was struck there?
Both.
Yeah.
So we started out classic. Haberdasher is, I've always envisioned this as a space where we embrace tradition,
Yeah.
but we're always open to innovation. So The classics, the basic understanding of how you build a cocktail is very much where we start.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't deviate too far from there, even though there's an amazing array of flavors that we have access to. I mean, California, growing up in Chicago, the raspberries were so sad, and I had no idea. And then I moved out here, and I'm like, these are huge and amazing and flavorful,
Yeah.
right? But what we have access to nowadays is just, it's abundant, right? So you can kind of reinvent the wheel a little bit,
For
but
sure.
the foundations are always there. So we actually have a class, the taxonomy of cocktails.
Okay.
And there's several different drink styles that you can kind of deviate from, right? A real cocktail, which is not many of the drinks that we're drinking nowadays.
Yeah.
Because
Totally.
it doesn't have bitters in it, right?
Yes.
If it has citrus, if it's shaken, how do you elongate that with water, soda water, crushed ice, large format ice? Like, there's a whole, like, absolutely nerdy abyss that we can go down when it comes to, like, how you build cocktails and where they come from historically.
Yeah.
I love, with history and my humanities background, like, I'm always getting inspired from that, and I always lean back on, like, okay, this is actually, like, built because of this cocktail,
For sure.
you know, and you can't really get away from it. As weird and abstract as you want to get, like with our new concept at Bitterbuck, we're eliminating a lot of things so that we can kind of reinvent the wheel, but it's still crazily fallen back into the classics.
And you talk about the classics and the foundation and the history. I mean, I did see at some point you and Cache going back to back, like, libraries and kind of teaching the history.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot.
So, like, it's a historical effort in a lot of ways that I think people don't realize, especially with, like, the club scene and, you know, get me my drink as fast as possible, right? But, like,
yeah,
the
and cocktails
history-
are sexy and it's a vibe, and you go there to, like, meet people or, like, have a good time, celebrate.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, like, the backbone of it. It's a lot of discipline.
Yeah. So I also saw some mention in some post somewhere about Bar Institute or, like, schooling that you might have posted. Is that something that you attended? Did you go to school for this? Or did you, like, how did you learn this kind of stuff?
So Cache guided me in a lot of ways, but then I found that I needed to arm myself with more information to create a better experience for guests. He's so good at storytelling, and he can really hold court, and he's got a deep amount of knowledge and experience there. But I just wanted to know as much as I could, so I sought out most of this information. There's so many books that have either been written from the 1800s all the way up. There's a little bit of gap there, you know, maybe the Great Depression and, you know, the Great Experiment, all that. But since then, there's an explosion of books, podcasts, so I'm always seeking that information out. There's some really cool institutions now that provide free education for bartenders to, like, really dive deep. I think that Bar Institute, they just did a movie about bar, which is a 5-day program. I haven't done it myself, but...
And so that's not, like, necessarily a requirement to be a bartender. Like, I mean, I know there's
No.
requirements for handling liquor, right? But, like, you don't
Yeah.
have to go to school to, like, receive
No.
a certain level of whatever, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the state of California, you have to take the course and test out on the responsible beverage server.
Okay.
That's just to make sure that you're not allowing any nefarious activities in your bar. You're not serving underage folks. You know how to check IDs.
Totally.
You're not over serving.
Okay.
Which are all very important. But you don't need to go to bartender school.
Okay.
In fact, like, it's sometimes, like, a little silly, but it's also, like, pretty important knowledge if you want and need that kind of structure to, like, learn something. But usually to get your foot into the door, it's you're learning how to bar back, you're learning how to work the door, and you just have to start working.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Awesome. So kind of talked about the schooling background and kind of the requirements. So you had an interest, right, when you were working at Single Barrel. Single Barrel eventually ended up closing, but then reopened as Haberdasher, or like how did that transition kind of work?
So 2010 we opened Single Barrel, or they opened Single Barrel. I hopped on.
Yeah.
And so the proprietors, the owners were Cache and Joe, and together they were a great team. Joe wanted to explore restaurants more so he actually tried his hand at a couple different really fun locations, but they made that transition to split I want to say like 2014. We started brainstorming, Cash and I, about what this needs to evolve into. It's not sustainable because the flavor profiling takes so long.
Yeah.
You're spending so much time with every single guest. It's a wonderful and precious experience, but it was time to evolve. We got to see 55 South open, Paper Plane open. In Paper Plane, I mean, all of that training came from Single Barrel. And those bartenders have gone on to either be brand ambassadors, bar owners of multiple bars that are aggressively growing, and then inspire other folks to run in other operations in the area and just kind of force people to level up. But it was time for us to adapt.
Yeah.
And Cash and I had essentially, Haberdasher was the original idea. The look of that space is what he was looking for, but he needed a few more pieces, and I think that's kind of where I came in, of how can we streamline, volume up, make this a little easier on the bartenders, as well as still maintain our true, like, the bones of what this place is.
Yeah.
And I ended up coming up with that name, Haberdasher, and the whole idea behind that was that we would tailor make your cocktails. And so it's like a subtle little pun there, but we still can flavor profile you the same exact way that we've always done.
Yeah.
We just provided another avenue for creation, growth, and better systems for the bartenders to operate behind that bar.
Yeah. And what did that kind of growth for you look like, kind of in that partnership that you had going with Cache at the time, right? Because it seems like you were pretty instrumental in like the brainstorming and kind of talking about like how the transition was going to happen, right? But like, how did that grow? Like, was it your interest, and was it like a kind of the relationship just kind of worked, or did you stick around long enough to like see things through, or like how did that kind of pan out for you?
So like Cash and I had worked together. My brother had worked there for years. He moved on to other bars in the area as well. Helped like build or rebuild some programs here and there, but then also just bartended. But that kind of, I started spreading my wings there a little bit more. I got to have more autonomy as Cash started to peel back a bit.
From
which
working
is very difficult.
6 days, 6 nights a week.
Yeah. I mean, that was an easy one. If he could, he doesn't want to work 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Nobody really does, but like I do. So I think that worked out, right? I was just there.
Yeah.
And I had just had an insatiable thirst for this, and I became bar manager, and Cash and I, we started dating about a year or so into me working there.
Okay.
Which is not a good idea, but it worked in this case.
Yeah.
And so we just got more time together to brainstorm and dream up concepts. And we shelved away several concepts, one that's coming to fruition soon.
Totally.
Like during all of that time, we visited bars, we just talked about cocktails and the idea of hospitality and being in service. And it just gave me a lot more to feed off of and go seek out that information and bring it together. And then as Cash learned to relinquish some of that control, I was able to kind of come in and build my own team.
Yeah.
A team that was burnt out and tired and a little toxic now became a team that I could build, and I could bring in people that I wanted to, and they were all, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and curious just like me. And now I'm like reaping the benefits of that. I get to watch them like be the leaders now. So it's crazy to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting kind of hearing all the different aspects of the business that kind of touch on like the history and the humanities, but also like the team building and also kind of the research and everything else, and the competitiveness, but also like just like the training, right?
Yeah, it's all of that. I think, my obsession was the cocktails initially. And then I quickly realized, well, for this to operate, I have to be a better leader. And so that became my obsession. So that's like the transitions all kind of were natural.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were intentional, but they fed into one another, and just learning how to be a better leader and owning those mistakes as I go along is just become my thing, more so than the cocktail books.
Yeah. And what kind of resources were you using to kind of guide you as a leader? Like, what kind of research were you doing there?
I sought out other bar professionals. There was this really cool program that Diageo that partnered up with this guy named Sean Finter, and he was a bar consultant in Australia and had very successful businesses, and then he just moved into consulting. And essentially, he got them to fund this whole program where he could send out essentially bar consultants on like how to build a better bar. Because the whole idea behind that is the statistics still show 8 out of 10 bars don't make its first year. And that means that spirits companies are leaving a lot on the table, and if they don't do something to help these small mom and pop shops survive and thrive, they're not going to be able to sell their booze. So that was the whole sell and incentive. But I got like essentially a bar operator therapist for free to like come and help us like build some structure. And it was in a time where I was gaining more and more authority and building on my confidence to like turn something into a true system, right? Because you can't just depend on one person or a couple of people. They're going to burn out.
Yeah. So what would you say are a few attributes of good leadership in this format? I mean, you mentioned kind of owning mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But like, could you share a few of those?
I would say, lead by example has always been a huge one. Not everybody sees what you're doing, though, so you have to find a way to be radically candid about what it is your intentions are and your hopes and dreams. And hopefully they align with their hopes and dreams. This could be like a 21-year-old who has no idea what the hell that they're trying to do, right? That was me. And then there could be a 36-year-old who's just like, well, I've been on my feet for 15, 20 years now. I don't know how to take this next step.
Yeah.
Or do I even want that? Am I so burnt out? Do I hate people? You can't have people who hate people in this industry. That's innate. You cannot work in this industry if you don't find people fascinating. Maybe infuriating, but they're fascinating.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I appreciate all the weirdness that you come across in bars. So lead by example, own your mistakes, be radically candid about what you're trying to do, and I would say, getting follow-up. Follow-up is really, really hard. You can dispense some lesson to somebody, but then if you don't follow up with them, it always falls short. Yeah. And if you don't follow up with yourself, it's going to fall short too. So that's something I don't think I'll ever stop trying to work on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So zooming forward a little bit, right? So you were kind of running Haberdasher as Cache was kind of stepping away a little bit from that project. But then Cache Only comes to fruition here. Or maybe even before that, right? But that's a project that you co-own, you worked on from the very beginning. So what did that project kind of look like?
So I think the first bar Cache ever walked into when he moved here. He's originally from Maui, but he's traveled a bunch of other spots. But when he first came to San Jose, the first bar he went to was the Dive Bar, which is where Cache Only is now. And that back bar, he was like, "This is amazing. I want to make drinks behind that bar. It just needs a little bit of this and a little bit of that." And so it's always he's always been side-eyeing that space, that back bar. Is just, they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah.
But then what San Jose needed was a craft cocktail bar, and the opportunity arose, and he'd just been chugging along doing that for a while. By the time the opportunity presented itself for Cache Only, he had already been working on that business plan. I'd been helping him with a few concept pieces of it, but he already kind of had that in mind.
Yeah.
Regardless
of the location at that point.
Regardless of the location.
Already looking for that kind of. So when it was kind of a crime of opportunity when that particular venue that he had liked, when he kind of.
Yeah, it was just, it all kind of came together,
okay.
Right? But I think the silver lining of COVID is that we got to open Cache Only.
Yeah. Minor details, COVID, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. So I think the owners of Dive Bar were already kind of looking to, like, offload that.
Yeah.
But then it just kind of sealed that deal of, like, okay, we need to sell this space during COVID. We don't know when or what or how it's coming back.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just to back up from there, shuttering Haberdasher for what we thought was going to be like 3 weeks.
Yeah, everybody.
Turned into a year and a half plus of just weirdness. It was essentially a lifeboat, and Cache is going to take care of everybody that was on that boat until we sank. We wanted to provide jobs, purpose, creativity still through. And that's why we flipped to this curbside cocktails, and it's like we wouldn't want to do that ever again, because it takes away the beauty, the fleeting moments that you get when you interact with people across the bar. You don't get that. You're just like masked up, 6 feet away, shoving something into their trunk, and be like, "Hi, bye," you know,
for
like.
Sure.
So
well, hopefully, we don't have to do that again.
Yeah, let's hope we don't have to do that again. But yeah, we were gonna. I think Cache really freaked out at the fact that he's like, if I was just bartending right now, I wouldn't be able to make next month's rent.
Totally.
I wouldn't be able to feed myself next week. And as a bartender, all these kids, like, they needed to survive. And, getting your unemployment took 4 or 5 months for some of these folks, you know? So it was important that we were just like, I feel like we were like, what's his name from Pirates of the Caribbean, where he's just
Jack Sparrow.
Jack Sparrow and just barely got to the port and like got off. But then we figured it out, and we reopened at the same time of opening Cache Only. So we started reopening Haberdasher and doing this whole proof of vax, masks, like limited people. The seating had to get all changed. We reopened that as we got the keys to Cache Only, and started like renovating there. So he was just there building it out. And then I had to literally go from spot to spot to fill in all of the gaps. But we got it open. I asked my brother to come back. He was living in San Diego for 3 years. And I was like, please come back and help us.
Yeah.
So he was like our bar manager for like 8 or 10 months. And just got us back up and running. So.
Yeah. And as if that was not enough, we have another project that's coming out, right? So I want to get into that, but I think before we start talking about Bitterbuck, I kind of want to talk about Fountain Alley and kind of like where it's going to be located, right? So that's on 2nd and San Carlos.
Santa Clara.
And
between 1st and 2nd Street.
Yeah.
It's on like the back end of that old like historic building, and I believe Foxtail, Milk Belly, City Fish, La Pasteleria,
Good Time.
Good Time and Scratch are all in that building.
Yeah. And so, but it's like a really interesting spot.
Yeah, it's gnarly. I mean, I didn't know it was called Fountain Alley. I just called it Piss Alley for the longest time. And being at Voodoo Lounge, like, I wouldn't even walk through that little pathway if I wanted to get to First. I would go around before when I was working over there.
Totally.
So, yeah, it was just like an open drug market for a long time.
So, I mean, there's kind of been this, like, revamping, revitalization, I guess is the technical word people use, of that area. So, like, you mentioned all the kind of businesses that are moving in.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have Bitterbuck that's going to be coming in there that you're also co-owner of.
Yes.
Right? What about that opportunity in that area kind of work? Because it's really close to Cache Only. I know it's a different concept, but like, what about that kind of attracted you, and what kind of made that?
So there was originally going to be a academic roastery in that location, and then there was an opportunity for another bar to open, but it fizzled out. So it was just kind of sitting there vacant for a while. And the investors, who were also longtime bartenders in the area, and then a couple other like non-industry folks, they were like, well, we still have this lease. We want to do something with it. And so it was Perry Hewitt who partnered at Orchard City Kitchen and Bisteka, and he's behind those bar programs initially, and has been kind of a consultant thereafter. And his partner, Saul Palomera, who's the operator. He's the me in the Cache Tomo like dynamic, right? He gets his hands dirty. He's there to operate. He's there to run his team.
Yeah.
All of that. He's gained so much experience with running bars. So the two of them and their creative outlet, plus Cache and myself, I was like, this is a cool little like team up, you know. And we also had Nach Gonzalez, who he's a San Jose boy, but he's built bars. He's the fabricator of like Smuggler's Cove and Dr. Funk and a bunch of cool bars in SoCal. He built this crazy octopus for this like tiki bar.
Yeah.
So he's having that vision of what he's doing in that space and creating the ambiance there was just like this 5-pointed like power thing, you know, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But the concept wasn't totally there. So we dusted off this concept that Cache and I had brainstormed 10 years ago called Bitterbuck. And the idea was a cafe by day, cocktail bar by night, focusing on Amaro, bitters, bitter flavors. And it was supposed to be this like more activated daytime kind of vibe space.
Yeah. Kind of a very European vibe
Yeah.
of like you can get your coffee in the morning and then come back after work, right?
Yeah, and maybe you're there right in that transition, and suddenly your coffee turns into an Americano,
Yeah.
right? Like, so having, and I think a lot of bartenders really like that because it's like sessionable drinking more so, rather than just, I mean, we definitely know how to turn it up, but having that option of like a Campari soda or a Garibaldi, which will be definitely a banger over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this concept we had originally built was we were looking at a space that was like 3,000 square feet. It was huge. We crunched the numbers. It was not a viable business opportunity.
Yeah.
So then when we saw this space, we were like, oh, this is 1,100 square feet. We just need to make a couple of tweaks here and there. We need to make this side efficient. And we still want to do quality coffee without going, oh, we're suddenly experts in espresso, because that's a whole other game that I will never say I'm going to ever be an expert in. But I've fallen down this deep rabbit hole of learning on coffee.
I was gonna say, you say you'd never say that, but
yeah, but it's I mean, like, yeah, when I get obsessed with like history and learning about like something that we drink has always been fascinating. Coffee has always been like a curiosity of mine. I've just never been able to like apply it because I got busy.
For sure.
But yeah, I'm leaning on some staff that are very well versed. I'm super excited to work with them in the world of coffee. So I hope to like create that opportunity where they can bridge the gap of coffee and cocktails, because most baristas end up wanting to bartend, or those are very tradable skill sets, you know.
Sure.
But I'm leaning heavily on the local roasters as well. So I want to pour the coffee that they want that expression to be poured as.
Awesome. So. Yeah. Do you have, I mean, it's been done before, right? So no fear, no whatever. But I mean, one of the tags I've kind of seen for Bitterbuck is no limes, no lemons, right?
Yeah.
It's a unique kind of drinking experience. I imagine that there could be the same 1-star and 5-star reviews that folks don't understand what they're...
If you really want a margarita and you just need your margarita, I am sorry to say we cannot help you. That being said, there's some really cool agave cocktails that we'll be able to make you, but they're just not going to be a margarita.
Totally.
So we're eliminating lemon and lime juice from the program altogether. We will have orange and grapefruit because, like I said, the Garibaldi is going to be just like a mainstay. We're going to be using a lot of citrus oil, but in terms of shaking up citrus cocktails, your best bet is a place like Haberdasher or even Cash Only is going to have a whole slew of like fun, crafty, and classic cocktails at their disposal. But also, you throw one stone and you hit paper plane and 55. And I think that the climate that we're in with the cocktail bars that are pushing the envelopes in the surrounding area, this concept wouldn't be ready 10 years ago, even when we designed it.
Yeah.
Now it's ready because it's more niche. It is really focused. We're not saying, no, you can't have that, but we just don't have that.
Yeah.
This is the experience. This is the nerdy, fun avenue that you can take here. And we have such a trusted community of great bars and operators and bartenders now that you've got every flavor at your disposal, and it should be community, or you should be peppering across downtown to all of these spots.
Yeah. I mean, it seems really interesting. You talk about the kind of climate and, I mean, downtown and the different establishments that folks can choose from, but also like the world's kind of a weird place for alcohol right now, even, right? Like we went to a winery recently, and they were kind of talking about like folks in the industry calling like this kind of no drinking or like sober movement that people are, you know, participating in is kind of like neo-prohibitionist movement, right? But like Bitterbuck doing coffee and then also these cocktails, like I imagine you're not planning on people drinking like 6 of these cocktails back to back, right? Like it's not like, it's like a slow drinking kind of like vibe and energy thing where it's like you can go in and be in community, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can come and enjoy this space, this ambiance, and you don't have to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
You can just enjoy coffee. You can enjoy low ABV offerings. You can have your Manhattan still if you want that as well.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got more of a spectrum there, rather than just like, okay, well, I guess I'm just stuck drinking the strongest thing in the room, you know. And that's not how I like to drink either.
Yeah.
I actually have kind of not an allergy, but a resistance to alcohol.
Interesting.
I've tried all sorts of different experiments of just like what really affects me, and Scotch, which I love, is always treated me well.
Okay.
But I can drink half a glass of wine and I'll feel just absolutely hungover. I don't even get to enjoy the drunkenness and that euphoria. So having low ABV options where I can just kind of graze and pace and enjoy, where maybe my friends can consume more.
Yeah.
Without feeling like I'm just like, well, here's my non-alcoholic, kind
Yeah.
of thing. Not to say anything bad about non-alcoholics. I think they're great.
Yeah.
And I think that there's like an amazing movement with them of
Yeah.
just like stepping that up.
Yeah.
Because everybody deserves to have that third space. That's the most important thing for us.
Totally.
Really.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I think that is. What else? I might need to take a pause. I was deep into it. I did talk about third spaces, that area. Awesome. Do it again.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, folks that are checking out Bitterbuck, what can they expect when they walk into the space? And what kind of vibe are y'all going for?
Definitely a spot where you can enjoy your cocktail, your coffee, maybe have your coffee with an Amaro. We have a really fun, focused cocktail menu designed by Perry Hewitt. Cache, myself, Soul have splashed in here and there. Our bar team is going to continue to push that envelope, but they also know that it is a very focused concept. So you are going to kind of be taken by the hand, and on the coffee side and on the cocktail side. Additionally, we are going to embrace technology even more. One, because we'll be using Square to order from your phone.
Okay.
So you don't order from the bartender. If you're seated at the bar, that's like prime real estate. So if you want to geek out with that bartender, then definitely get there early to try different Amari and sit there and have that whole experience. But if you're seated out on the patio, we'll have 4 to 6 picnic tables out there, so good for groups. Inside, it's a small space.
Yeah.
We'll have this big communal table where you can like kind of hang out. It's definitely has a more European vibe where it's just like you're gonna share this space because it's small and
For sure.
But you can also have that date night on the banquette with your hubby or your wife and grab those cocktails, but you can all order from your phone. The floor bartender and the bartenders at the bar are there to guide you. So they're going to be there 100% of the time to kind of help you decipher what is this Amaro versus that Amaro, because it's complicated.
Totally.
The flavor is intense and diverse. And so kind of helping flavor profile you, which kind of pulls us right back to single barrel, is going to be a heavy, heavy aspect of this concept.
Yeah.
Because it's a smaller space, we're going to have the bandwidth to be able to do that. But then also if you want your spritz and you want, like party, then you've got that opportunity to just order from your phone and you get all your stuff without the hassle of the back and forth in transactions. So the technology learning curve is going to be there.
Yeah.
We're also enlisting a pour steady. I don't even think there's a pour steady in the area, but this is a 5-part pour over coffee machine.
Okay.
Invented like 12 years ago. And the whole idea of pour steady is very slow, right? If you're in a rush, you just need that drip coffee poured and get out, right?
Yeah.
You don't have the time to wait for pour over
Okay.
or like a hand pour. But this streamlines it. It creates consistency. The education with the roasters and the knowledge with the grinds is going to be very like heavily trained in the staff.
Mm-hmm.
But they will be able to press a button and automate that and overlap pouring so that you can still get your coffee in 3 or 4 minutes rather than 6 or 7.
Totally. And this is planning to be open in the mornings, right? So
7 a.m.
7 a.m. So you can get your morning coffee there.
Yep.
You can go to the office and then
Yep.
come on back afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be partnering with local bakeries too. Sweet Dragon's on the docket. She has amazing pies, sweet, savory, and everything in between. And so you can do like a quick grab and go of some items. It'll be pretty like slim to start. We might expand beyond that, but we want to work with local roasters, local bakers. So yeah, you can even come in and grab your afternoon coffee with a savory pie, and then come 4 o'clock, we'll open as a cocktail bar with dinner service. And the food will be niche as well, where our chef is focusing around focaccia and some fun things to pair with that. And but we really want to highlight those cocktails.
That's awesome. So, we're 4 projects in right here for, your career, right, that you kind of been really instrumental in. What keeps you going? Like, what are you most excited about? Like, what keeps you inspired with wanting to do this new project?
I think I figured out maybe 2 years ago why I do this. And I was finally able to like put it into words. And I think the thing that fills my cup is that I get to create careers for other people within this industry. I want to be able to build up a bartender into a bar manager, into a general manager, into gaining equity into our businesses, or if they have the creativity and the drive. I wouldn't recommend being an entrepreneur and like opening bars. It's really fucking hard. But if you want to do that, we can start to create that path for you. Be a guiding hand, partner with you if that's the case. We have some folks who had been with us for years. They got married and they moved to Portland, and in about a year or two, they're going to open their own spot.
That's awesome.
And then, everybody coming up at Haberdasher has just put in that time. And I seek out further knowledge on leadership, cocktails, coffee, whatever it is in terms of hospitality, simply because if they can create a thriving life for themselves, especially in this really expensive region of the world, then that makes me happy there.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah,
if you
thank
can
you.
Look at the camera and tell folks where they can find more about Bitterbuck and where they might be able to follow and show up for when it's open for coffee and drinks.
Yeah, so Bitterbuck is located at 30 Fountain Alley between 1st and 2nd Street in downtown San Jose. You can find us on Instagram at BitterbuckSJ, Bitterbuck on Facebook, and we'll have our menu up in a matter of a week or two, and we should be shooting to open, if everything falls into place, the week of 4th of July, which is a little crazy.
Awesome.
But yeah, we'll announce that all through our mailing lists through Haberdasher, if you already follow us at Haberdasher, as well as on social media.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's
Thank
been so great
you.
talking
This
to
is
you.
great.
Congratulations
Yeah.
on the new spot. Looking forward to stopping by.
Yeah, can have coffee and coffee.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the South Bay creatives.